It was an early morning start to my first day off from work in Nebraska. I took the opportunity to explore a UP mainline, which has been on my bucket list for the longest time. I rented myself a Jeep and hit I-80 East to Omaha, heading towards Council Bluffs Yard just across the Missouri River. Today we're exploring UP's Overland route, part of the historic Transcontinental Railroad that runs from Omaha, Nebraska, westward through Wyoming and Utah. This trip will cover the areas between Council Bluffs, Iowa, and Gibbon, Nebraska. The morning starts at UP's Council Bluffs Yard. Obviously, this was my first time here, and I didn't know where anything was, not even a main line. I found a road that follows the north end of the yard, and that led me to a grade crossing. Unfortunately for me though, the gates were already down, and I just missed my first UP train. It was an eastbound manifest heading towards Missouri Valley, as I attempt to drive on the wet roads to get a closer look. As I was driving around, exploring the area a little bit more, I find out to my surprise, Canadian National also has a yard here in Council Bluffs. This is a part of the ex-Illinois Central Railroad, running between Fort Dodge and Council Bluffs. There isn't a whole lot of activity from their main line, usually only a few locals to my knowledge, but a few SD60s and various freight cars can all be seen here in this small yard. Illinois Central test car. I finally was able to find my first official UP train. UP 5628 East crosses the Missouri River into Council Bluffs Yard. They had clear signals to proceed east, so I go back out to about where I started, shooting at the 13th Street grade crossing, with train MKCCN 21, a Kansas City, Missouri to Superior, Wisconsin manifest freight train. Being this was weeks after the historic flooding that hit Iowa and Nebraska, the Missouri River was still showing very high levels of water. I pulled into the parking lot of a casino, getting as close as I could to see how much damage was left from the floods. While keeping an eye on the river, I hear a UP train departing the yard with what sounds like a nice EMD leader. But it was something more than just an EMD. Oh crap. It's UP 1943. UP 1943, the spirit of the Union Pacific, surprised me out of nowhere, leading the railroad's office car special bound for Salt Lake City. This was one of those specially painted engines, dedicated to supporting our troops serving in our military forces. Of course, being I'm from Atlanta, I knew for a fact 1943 wouldn't even touch the state of Georgia, with no chance for me in catching it. But now, here in Iowa and into Nebraska, I can check this engine off the UP Special Locomotive list. This will also be my train to chase west and to start my adventure on the UP Transcontinental Route. And so, the chase begins, getting back on I-80 heading west, where I would hopefully beat it to the next populated town outside of Omaha. The tracks follow the interstate for a few miles. While trying to catch up, I saw this eastbound loaded coal train passing by, and was shocked to see 3 mid-train DP units. That train had to be a monster if they needed that much power. I luckily caught up with UP 1943 West, even with the amount of the morning rush hour traffic roaming around. But I was still pressing my luck, as I had to take back roads from here. I barely made it in time to the town of Elkhorn, Nebraska. The second I put the Jeep in park, the gates were already activating. I grabbed my camera and I had to shoot it by hand. As the OCS was picking up speed, it almost beat me to the next town west, at Valley, Nebraska. The engineer gave out a nice little horn show as they were approaching. I apologize for the camera shakiness in this clip. My camera was on a pretty cheap tripod that doesn't really work well with the wind. I wanted to show you this clip though, as UP 1943 met UP 5316 East with a manifest freight train. I had to shoot them from the Jeep while trying to catch up with the OCS once more. This train was a monster, maxing out with over 218 cars, including 4 mid-train DP units. One of those units was UP 7400, another one of the specially painted engines. This one is dedicated as the Breast Cancer Awareness Unit, as it had a pink ribbon on the side instead of the regular UP logo. I eventually caught up with UP 1943 West as we traveled between Valley and Fremont. The tracks follow the highway all the way to Fremont, so I took this opportunity to pace the engine, averaging between 50 to 55 miles an hour. Approaching the city of Fremont, the train slows down as it prepares to cross the interlocking of the BNSF Sioux City subdivision. But once it clears the diamond, it's full speed ahead. I was able to get ahead of the train coming through Fremont, but just as I reached the intersection to get on Highway 30, they've already reached their maximum speed limit of 80 miles an hour. It was going to be impossible to keep up, but I did have one more chance at getting them again, since there was another slowdown with yard limits in Columbus. UP 1943 met an eastbound I train outside of North Bend with UP 8575 at the lead, and a Norfolk Southern ET44AC in the mix. I caught up with UP 1943 again as it slowed down to diverge from track 2 to track 1. So here's pretty much a little update on what I've been doing. I've been trying to stay ahead of the office car special. Got through a big town called Columbus, Nebraska. Too many traffic lights. So I am now west of that. I don't know what town I just went through, but I'm about 10 miles east of Silver Creek. I'm gonna pick a little open spot and pretty much just shoot him one more time because I haven't really had a good chance to get a good setup. So I'm gonna shoot him one more time, and then comes the regular scheduled programming for the UP Columbus sub. I was previously on the Omaha sub. Once reaching Columbus, it turns into the Columbus sub to Grand Island. The small town I passed earlier was Duncan. Construction got in my way west of there with a one-lane road. I pulled off at a random grade crossing and got one last shot of them before letting it go, since it was going to be difficult to catch up with them again. After chasing the OCS for well over 100 miles, believe it or not, I'm now on the hunt for anything that shows up at this point. First up is UP 6758 East with train C BTWS 921. Loaded coal from Black Thunder Mine in Wyoming to Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, shooting them just outside of Silver Creek, Nebraska. In Silver Creek lies a huge grain elevator, as well as a high hood locomotive that guards the facility. I didn't see any engine markings, but this 4162 is probably ex-Chicago and Northwestern, just by looking at the paint scheme. The wind was picking up, and it was getting much colder as UP 5499 East leads train MKCCB21, a manifest freight train from Kansas City to Council Bluffs. It's hard to tell with all the wind in the background, but the engineer gave me a nice little horn show. This train is usually routed via the Falls City subdivision to Omaha, but being that line got washed out by the floods, they were rerouted via the Marysville sub to Gibbon Junction, then moving east to Council Bluffs from there. Clarks, Nebraska is the next town west of Silver Creek, with an average population of about 321. It's a nice little historic area, and figured this spot would be great to shoot a train passing through here. With the signals lit for another eastbound, UP 7751 East leads train MNPPR22, a North Platte, Nebraska to Proviso, Illinois manifest freight train, approaching the two grade crossings. I found one of these crossings interesting to me, as it's dedicated for pedestrians only, and also having its own crossing signal. There was also a little mix of Canadian Pacific power added to the consist of this train. Just outside of Clark's is another grain elevator with an old yard switcher locomotive dedicated to the facility. I'm not sure what this was originally. Next stop, and next town west of Clark's, is Central City, where I intercepted UP 4932 East at the 17th Road grade crossing. This is train MGICB 22, manifest from Grand Island, Nebraska to Council Bluffs, Iowa. Central City, Nebraska, a nice and peaceful little railroad town representing the old Union Pacific days dating back to the start of the Transcontinental Railroad. You can get a nice wide open view of the UP Columbus sub, both eastbound and westbound, especially with the huge grain elevator in the middle of town. You will also get plenty of horn action here, as there are 4 grade crossings in a row, as well as maximum speed from all different freight train movements. There is also a truck next to the tracks that has been wrecked from a previous train accident. This truck is showing other drivers about the safety when around active train tracks as a part of the Operation Lifesaver program, saying, "Always expect a train," and "More than one track, more than one train." This shows the consequences as to when drivers are not aware with their surroundings such as this, and could cost them their life. Another cool thing about Central City is there's another railroad that runs through this area, and that is the Nebraska Central Railroad Company. I'm pretty sure that's classified as a short line. This GP38-2 is seen sitting on a spur track with the engine still running outside an industrial facility. Of course, I step aside for a few minutes to grab a snack, and another UP eastbound shows up. I briefly saw the power, having BNSF in the mix, so I chase it east towards Clark's. While catching up pacing alongside with them, it cost me to miss a westbound grain train, with UP 5915 leading the GSM EKE 22. I arrived at the grain elevator outside of Clark's to catch the train I missed at Central City, which was UP 6756 East with train UEKC C722. Heading back towards Central City, yet another eastbound shows up, this time having multiple engines in the consist. The two that caught my eye was SD60-2204 and GP40M-2 1515. Not too often do I come across UP standard cab units. Back in Central City for yet another eastbound, UP 7088, still showing in its original UP lettering paint scheme, leads the ILAG319, a daily Los Angeles, California to Global 3 in Rochelle, Illinois. It's just been nothing but a parade of eastbounds today. Moving on to the west, we come into the village of Chapman, Nebraska, where we see UP 2749 leading the eastbound hotshot ZBRG1B20, a Portland, Oregon to Chicago, Illinois high priority intermodal train, moving at a maximum speed of 70 miles an hour. I pulled off on the west side of Chapman at a rural crossing, with the milepost 137.0 defect detector directly to the left. I've never heard a UP detector before, and I wanted to be sure to capture one on video. It was a little bit of a wait until UP 2531 East appeared, with train SLJRC 18, classified as an empty wind turbine train. It had a mix of Canadian National Power as well. Usually, with most defect detectors, they'll give a reading on the train, but the UP detectors apparently do not do so here, unless there was a defect detected. I eventually arrived just outside of Grand Island, just as UP 5387 East was lined with train ILXAHX 19, an extra Los Angeles, California to Ashland Avenue Yard in Chicago for Norfolk Southern. UP's Grand Island Yard would mark the end of the Columbus sub and the start of the Kearney sub. Train ZBRG218 is seen dropping off a set of intermodal cars. I wasn't sure how long they'd be, so I passed them up and went for the hotspot of the city. The BNSF Ravenna subdivision crosses over the UP Kearney subdivision, making the action here 2 times better with train traffic. It's pretty uncommon though to get the perfect over and under shot from both railroads. BNSF 8458 East is seen with a loaded coal train heading towards Lincoln, as a UP local train prepares to head towards Kearney after working Grand Island. UP 5565 East with train MKCCBB 22 passes through the heart of Grand Island, taking this manifest from Kansas City to Council Bluffs. This is another one of those reroute trains due to the flooding along the Falls City subdivision. A local yard job is seen shoving into the yard with GP 38-2 513 for power, as traffic over the crossing gets jammed up after UP 5565 East cleared. Another BNSF loaded coal train passes over the yard as they notch up on the outskirts of Grand Island. You can see the UP yard local has pulled back up towards the bridge with the covered hopper car and a caboose as well. Another UP eastbound pops up with train U EPL UM20 as UP 5476 leads the way through Grand Island. UP 1886 West is now ready for departure out of Grand Island Yard. But before doing so, the dispatcher asked for them to wait at CP B147 for a few to get by. So they pulled up just before the crossing, at the perfect spot, with perfect timing. After coming to a stop, a BNSF westbound H train was going over the UP. And here I am thinking to myself, the one thing that I probably wouldn't see happen, happened. It was also an added treat to see an XBN Jeep 38 AC still in its original paint. This made for a nice added touch of color for the picture. clear signal is lined for UP 8160 West, one of two trains that UP 1886 has to wait for. This is the COMNR 921, an empty coal train from Omaha, Nebraska to the New Rochelle mine in Wyoming. Last train to wait on was UP 7911 East with the ZBRG219, a Portland, Oregon to Global 2 hotshot, although the speeds were not that high. UP 1886 West finally gets a signal indication out of the yard. This is the LFG 5721 local that runs between North Platte and Grand Island. Our good friend, Mr. Sun, popped out from the clouds, which means it was time to chase this train down for better lighting. I get ahead to the town of Alda, Nebraska to catch UP 1886 West again. This marks my first UP SD40-2 leading and caught on camera. Moving west, not really chasing the local at this point, I run into UP 8321 East at Wood River with train MKC-MC 22, running from Kansas City, Missouri to Mason City, Iowa. This is another reroute from the Fall City subdivision. Road construction screwed me over once more on the west side of Wood River with a one-lane road for a few miles. While stuck in traffic, UP 6578 East passes by with train ICIG119. I had no choice but to shoot them from the Jeep. Surprisingly, I caught up with UP 1886 West passing through Gibbon Junction. I figured I'd catch up with them until I ran into another eastbound. So, the chase is on. I was planning on pacing the engines for a good ways, until this next eastbound suddenly changed my plans. Well, time to abort that mission. UP 2001, the Olympic Torch Relay Unit, was leading the LFG 5722 local out of North Platte, heading for Grand Island. I left UP 1886 and found a train to chase back east since it was starting to get late. They met a coal train sitting at Gibbon Junction on the Marysville sub, as well as a westbound I train with UP 3843 leading. I picked a random grade crossing outside of Shelton to catch UP 2001 east with only seconds to spare, shooting them handheld and backlit from the sun. wanted to catch them again, so I detoured around the one-lane roadwork congestion at Wood River, making my way to the interstate. I actually went back to Central City to avoid the rush hour traffic in Grand Island, only to find out then that UP 2001 went as far as Grand Island Yard. After all that chasing, I let that one go, and waited until a train showed up in Central City, and it wasn't too long till one was lined. UP 8462 West with train MELNP 20 speeds by, wasting no time, heading for North Platte. Being that the sun was out, I got a better picture of NCRC 1017 idling on the spur track in Central City. The engine was still running. Making my way back east, I follow Highway 30, hoping for one last train before the sun was to set for the day. I got lucked out with an eastbound and a westbound line. I wanted to time this perfectly with the rolling meet as a grand finale. I didn't get too lucky on that part though, as the westbound on track 1 beat the eastbound outside of Clark's. I had to keep going east to get back to Lincoln, I just chased and paced UP 5459 towards Columbus, going every bit of 50 miles an hour. reached the end of this amazing adventure. Union Pacific definitely ran some trains for me to always remember. Special thanks to Andrew Stevenson and Harrison Crawford for providing me with intel and train symbols. Be sure to hit that like button below, as well as turning on those notifications for all updated content with my channel. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. So long for now, from Columbus, Nebraska, along the UP Columbus subdivision.